Is money printing set to explode? This is the 7-part series we're doing to get our heads around what money printing actually is and how it works. Today, step number 5, helicopter money with non-banks. In case this is your first video in the series, we'll go through the players quickly before we start. We got the Fed, the government, your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam. This side of the equation, financial economy. Over here, the real economy. This represents the private sector, people producing, we'll call them cows, corn and wheat. And then the balance sheets of the individuals and entities like the average Joe, the average Jane, and everybody's favorite, Moody the millennial. Before we move any further, I want to stress exactly what I stressed in the last couple parts of this series. The commercial banking system, the balance sheet, really straddles the financial economy and the real economy. What I mean by that, the asset side of their balance sheet is in the financial economy, along with the Fed and the government, where the liability side of their balance sheet, those are the customer deposits, just like your deposit with B of A or Wells Fargo, is in the real economy. So your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam comes along and says, I need to buy some votes. And the easiest way to do that is send stimulus checks to millennials. The problem is Sam doesn't have anything in his account at the Fed. You see, the commercial banks, most of them, and the Treasury has an account at the Fed just like you have an account with your local bank. It's a deposit account, the very same thing. And just like your deposits are a liability of the commercial banking system, or your bank more specifically, the deposits of the government and the commercial banks are liabilities of the Fed. It's the exact same thing. And we talked in earlier videos about this just being an IOU from the commercial banking system to Joe, Jane, or Moody. And it's the same thing. This is just an IOU from the Fed to the government or the commercial banks themselves. We talked about fugazis. In this case, we can really see that it's just pixie dust.
It's never landed. It is no matter. It's not on the elemental chart. It's not real.
And it's a great way to describe not only the deposits that you think you have in your account, but really aren't there. They're just IOUs, and these bank reserves. So anyway, that's a completely separate rabbit hole. So your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam has nothing in his account. So he needs to sell a treasury. Let's say Joe has saved up $100, so he buys $100 worth of treasuries from Sam. That goes onto the asset side of Joe's balance sheet. But the deposit is gone. Poof, it's no longer there. Those $100 of IOUs are gone from the commercial banking system momentarily. And we'll get into that in just a moment. When Joe buys the treasury, the bank reserves are transferred from the bank's accounts at the Fed to the government. So this is step A. In step B, the banks now have 0 reserves. The treasury has the $100. But Sam wants to buy Moody's vote. That's what this is all about. So he sends her a check, or I always get it wrong. I don't know Moody's personal pronouns. So he sends them a check. And Moody goes down to the local bank and deposits the check. Now all of a sudden, that's a liability, an additional $100 liability of the commercial banking system. So those bank reserves then go from the government's account back to the commercial banking system. So we're right where we started. And the deposit that was subtracted from Joe's account initially, or the deposit that disappeared as an IOU, as a liability of the commercial banking system, is now right back in the system because that deposit was replaced by a new deposit that went to Moody the millennial. So the commercial banking system's balance sheet starts with 3 deposits and it finishes with the same 3 deposits. The Fed's balance sheet ends up the exact same. 100 in bank reserves in the bank's accounts, 0 in the government. The only thing that's really changed is there's an additional asset on the balance sheet of the private sector because that treasury is now over here in Joe's account. But remember, there's still 3 deposits, the same 3 deposits we started with, and there's additional debt on the balance sheet of your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam. The easiest way to think about this is $100 came out of this side, went into this side momentarily, into the government's account, and then went right back out into the real economy in the form of a check or an additional deposit. So we subtract a deposit here, we add a deposit there. This is why the MMT people say whenever you pay your taxes or buy bonds, it destroys money. When the government then sends those checks out, it creates money. Whether you want to look at it that way or you just want to look at the same currency being circulated from the real economy into the government's coffers and then back out into the real economy, it's still pretty much the same thing. We have $100 coming out, $100 coming in. So on net balance, it's a wash. There were no more currency units that were actually created chasing the same amount of goods and services in the real economy. Therefore, I would not consider this process, helicopter money with the non-banks, money printing. And to use the technical terms, broad money in the system, or M2 money supply, is the exact same at the end as it was at the beginning, and the base money, the liabilities of the Fed, is the exact same at the end as it was at the beginning. For the next segment in this 7-part series, the last segment, or the entire playlist, check out these links that are probably all around me, and I will see you on the next video.